Why do some people shine so brightly that they eclipse everyone else in the room? I sat in my usual corner at the Green Lake brunch spot, the one our family had claimed every Sunday for years, stirring a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The dark wood chairs creaked under the weight of familiar voices, and sunlight slanted through striped curtains, catching the diamond ring on my sister Vivian's hand. She was laughing, her voice sharp and clear, the kind that made heads turn. I kept my eyes on the coffee, the spoon circling in a rhythm that steadied me, but her words cut through the chatter, each one a dart aimed at me. "Your old job was a snooze fest," she said loud enough for the whole cafe to hear. It's kind of hilarious that someone pushing 30 still doesn't have a real job. My chest tightened, but I didn't look up. Silence was my shield, and I'd learned long ago it was stronger than any retort. Vivian's laughter echoed a solo performance with no encore from the table. My mother murmured, "Vivian, don't be like that," her voice soft, almost swallowed by the clink of forks on plates. My father cleared his throat, muttering something about the eggs, Benedict being too salty, desperate to steer the conversation away. But Vivian's smirk lingered a hook, baiting me for a reaction. I pressed my lips together, the coffee's surface rippling under my spoon. To her, my silence was proof of failure, a blank page she could write her assumptions on, the rest of the family, Uncle Henry, Aunt Laura. My parents followed her lead, their eyes sliding past me like I was furniture. I'd always been the quiet one, the one who didn't demand attention, and somehow that made them think I had nothing to say. But silence wasn't emptiness. It was the space where I'd built a world they couldn't imagine. I wasn't always invisible to them. I remember my 12th birthday, the candles flickering on a cake. No one noticed, because Vivian burst into the living room, a gold trophy gleaming in her hands. Our baby just won the state dance competition. My mom had beamed, wrapping her arms around Vivian. I stood there, the wax dripping onto the frosting, my wish forgotten before I could make it. Vivian was the firework, bright and explosive, dazzling everyone. I was the flashlight, steady but overlooked. My dad used to joke about it, calling us his fireworks and flashlight, as if it was charming that one daughter outshone the other. Back then, I'd retreat to my room, open the clunky laptop he'd given me, and lose myself in code-building data models, while Vivian's trophies lined the shelves. Even as a kid, I loved what others found boring, taking toys apart, tracing the logic of a video game's smooth mechanics. My mom would say, "Julia can sit for hours and you won't hear a sound." But they never asked what I was building in that silence. Now, at 29, I sat at that brunch table, Vivian's words still hanging in the air. I didn't need their applause. I'd learned that the greatest things don't need to be shouted. But as Vivian's laughter faded, I wondered, would she ever see me, or would I always be the shadow she dismissed? My spoon paused. Maybe the truth would speak louder than I ever could. What does it mean to build something no one sees? I'd carved out an empire in the shadows, not for fame, but for freedom, and it started with a single line of code. That Sunday brunch left a bitter taste. Vivian's mockery still ringing in my ears as I drove back to my apartment on the 18th floor. Seattle's skyline, framed by a soft April mist, Lake Union, shimmered below its surface, a mirror for my thoughts. I opened my laptop, the glow of Datalume's internal system washing over me, and there it was, a notification from HR-recommended candidate Vivian Bennett. My heart skipped a beat. My sister, the one who'd just called my life a snooze fest, had applied to the company I'd co-founded, valued at $83 million. She had no idea I was the one reviewing her file, no clue that the sister she mocked held the pen that signed her future. It all began 6 years ago when I was 23, sitting cross-legged on the floor of a cramped apartment near Capitol Hill. Sam Fletcher, my best friend from college, was sprawled on a beanbag, tossing ideas back and forth like a tennis match. We were two dreamers with beat-up laptops and a wild plan to build an intelligent data analytics system that could predict user behavior in real time. Banks, hospitals, government agencies, they'd all need it, we said. I wrote the first lines of code that night, my fingers flying across the keys while Sam sketched pitch decks on a whiteboard. He was the talker, the one who could charm investors with a grin. I was the builder, the one who made the system hum. By year 1, a major bank signed a trial contract. By year 2, our platform was woven into finance, healthcare, and risk analysis systems across the country. By year 3, Datalume was valued at $83 million, and I held 49% of the shares. But ask anyone, and they'd only know Sam Fletcher, the face of the company. My name, Julia Bennett, Senior Technical Advisor, is a ghost in the system by choice. I'd always wanted it that way. Fame came with hollow handshakes, flashing cameras, and whispers that drowned out your real self. I'd seen too many lose their privacy chasing it. So Sam and I made a pact. He'd take the spotlight and I'd stay behind the curtain. My name only on internal documents, investor agreements, and soon Vivian's paycheck. I led projects from my apartment, approved budgets after hours, and fixed bugs while Seattle slept. Once a week, I'd slip into the office after 6 p.m. when the cubicles were empty, the ninth-floor kitchen quiet except for the hum of the espresso machine. Sam respected my choice, never once leaking my role to the press or employees. Sometimes I wondered if I'd made the right call, but as I clicked approve on Vivian's application, I knew silence was what made this moment possible. Back at that brunch, Vivian had kept talking, oblivious to the bomb she'd dropped. "I'm targeting a new company," she said, waving a hand like it was nothing. "Something called Dataloom. Heard they're hiring." Her beige blazer caught the light as she leaned back, legs crossed, bragging about her now-defunct accounting firm. "I'm a problem solver. If they bring me in, I'll handle their budget better than anyone there. If they pass me up, it's their loss." I bit my tongue to keep from laughing. That bold, smug line was a carbon copy of the ones she'd thrown at me for years, claiming I'd never get anywhere hiding in the shadows. I looked up for a split second, then down, careful to hide the flicker in my eyes. She didn't know it, but those shadows were where I'd built everything she was now chasing. That night alone in my apartment, I leaned back in my chair, the city's lights blurring through the mist. Vivian's application photo stared back from the screen, her smile confident, her blazer pressed. The reviewer's note read, "Confident demeanor, strong communicator, well-suited for budget analyst role." I didn't hesitate. I clicked the 3 dots selected, approve, and sent her into the world I'd created. Not out of spite, but because I believed in fairness. If she were capable, she'd thrive. If not, the truth would surface on its own. As the screen dimmed, I wondered, when Vivian saw my name on her paycheck, would she recognize it? Or would she still see me as the faded extra in her dazzling story? How do you measure the weight of a secret when it's carried in plain sight? A week after I approved Vivian's application, I sat in my apartment, the Seattle skyline a blur of gray beyond my window, and watched her first day at Dataloom through the internal camera system I'd designed. The ninth-floor kitchen hummed with morning energy, sunlight glinting off the espresso machine where Vivian stood, her beige blazer swapped for a crisp navy jacket. She was all smiles, gesturing at the digital bulletin board, flashing our latest projects, predictive models for healthcare, risk algorithms for banks. "This is the company that hired me," she told a colleague, her voice brimming with pride. "Word is the founders are super private. No one's seen the second one. Might just be a legal placeholder." I chuckled softly, the sound swallowed by the quiet of my living room. Not the first time I'd been called a ghost, but hearing it from Vivian's lips stung in a way I hadn't expected. I kept my routine, working remotely, approving budgets after midnight. When the office was a skeleton of empty desks, Vivian settled into her role as budget analyst, her confidence filling the gaps where experience fell short. Sam called me that afternoon, his voice crackling through the video feed. "She's off to a decent start," he said, sipping coffee from a Dataloom mug. "Confident, maybe a bit showy, but competent." "You sure about this, Julia? She has no idea who you are." I nodded, my screen reflecting the city's drizzle. "For now, let's keep it that way. If she's good, it's her chance. If not, the truth will out." This wasn't about proving a point. I wanted to see Vivian in a space where her spotlight didn't blind her, where she had to earn her place without an audience cheering her name. Weeks passed, and I slipped into the office after hours. The elevators silent, the air thick with the scent of cooling servers. Vivian's reports crossed my desk. Sharp, ambitious, occasionally overreaching. I approved them, my e-signature a quiet mark in the system, Julia Bennett, NS. She didn't notice at first, too busy charming colleagues with her quick wit. But one evening in the basement server room, her high heels echoed down the hallway, sharp and unexpected. I was checking a security patch, the green glow of monitors casting shadows on my face when she appeared in the doorway. her expression a mix of surprise and suspicion. "Julia," she said, voice tight, "what are you doing down here? Only senior management has access." I straightened, wiping dust from my hands, and smiled. "Guess I have special access." Her eyes narrowed, lips parting to press further when Sam emerged from the adjacent room, a folder in hand. "Hey, Julia, can you sign off on the new AI deployment plan by Friday?" he asked, casual but deliberate. I took the folder, glancing at Vivian. Her gaze froze, a flicker of doubt creasing her brow, but she said nothing and turned away. That moment lingered, a crack in her certainty. I caught snippets of her curiosity through the office grapevine accessed via my system's backdoor logs. In the downstairs cafe, she leaned toward a colleague, her voice low. "Who's this NS person signing everything like a ghost in the system?" The colleague shrugged. "Probably a legal figurehead. I don't trust names without faces." Vivian's smirk was audible even through the audio feed. "Same." I tightened my grip on my coffee mug, the ceramic warm against my palms. She'd always dismissed what she couldn't see, but now she was searching her confidence, fraying at the edges. I didn't push it. I kept my distance, approving her latest budget proposal from my apartment, the city's lights pulsing below. Each signature was a breadcrumb leading her closer to a truth she wasn't ready for. As I closed my laptop, the drizzle thickened outside, veiling Lake Union in mist. Vivian was circling her questions, sharpening. How long before she saw the name behind the initials and the sister behind the shadow? What happens when the truth you've dismissed stares you in the face? 2 months into Vivian's tenure at Dataloom, I sat in my apartment, the Seattle drizzle. A soft curtain beyond my window, and watched a system alert flash on my laptop. Internal access request, Vivian Bennett. Dataloom founding records. My pulse quickened. She'd reached the master file, the one that laid bare my role as co-founder. I pictured her in the accounting department, her navy jacket draped over a chair, the soft blue glow of her monitor illuminating her face as she clicked through documents. Vivian wasn't one to scream when shocked. She'd go silent, her eyes blazing, then dig until she could prove the impossible wrong. I leaned back, the leather of my chair creaking, and waited. The truth I'd carried in silence was about to speak, and I wondered if it would change her or simply sharpen her edges. Vivian's curiosity had been building since that server room encounter, her questions about my signatures. Julia Bennett NS growing pointed. I'd seen it in the logs, her late-night searches through budget files, her requests for access to restricted folders. She'd stumbled across my e-signature on a marketing proposal, the co-founder's ID code stark beside it. I knew she wouldn't let it go. That morning in the downstairs cafe, I'd overheard her through the audio feed. Her voice low but firm. "This NS person signs off on everything big," she told a colleague, stirring her latte. "Who are they?" The colleague shrugged. "Some exec, probably. Names like that are just placeholders." Vivian's laugh was sharp, dismissive. "I don't trust ghosts." Behind the wooden partition, I'd pressed my fingers to my coffee cup, its warmth grounding me. She was so close to the truth, yet still blind to the sister she'd always overlooked. By afternoon, Vivian had cracked the vault. She requested full access to the latest quarter's budget records, her clearance granting her entry to files where my name appeared again and again, not just signatures, but dates, file IDs, legal assessments, tying Dataloom's financial core to me. I got the alert as I worked from home, the city's mist thickening outside. She wasn't just seeing my name now. She was staring at proof that I wasn't some low-level employee. I was the one who'd approved her hiring, her budget proposals, her very paycheck. I closed my eyes, imagining her reaction. Those blazing eyes, that silent pause. Would she confront me, or would pride keep her quiet? I didn't have to wait long. That evening, I broke my routine and arrived at the office early, the 9th floor pantry, quiet except for the drip of a coffee maker. Vivian stood alone, gripping the counter's edge, a printed page crumpled in her hand. Her navy jacket was slung over a chair, her hair slightly mussed as if she'd run her fingers through it in frustration. I approached, my sneakers soft on the tile. "You okay?" I asked, my voice steady. She turned, her eyes locking onto mine, furious and confused. "Julia," she said, her voice tight, almost a hiss. "You're the co-founder." I didn't answer right away. I nodded, letting the weight of her words settle. How long, she demanded, stepping closer, the page trembling in her grip. Since the beginning, I said, calmly. Sam and I started Dataloom in a tiny room near Capitol Hill, back when you thought I was unemployed. Vivian laughed, not her usual bright burst, but a bitter, self-directed sound, half disbelief, half irony. So all this time I've been working under you. You signed my paycheck. I nodded again, meeting her gaze. Not out of pride. Vivian. Just doing my job. You're capable, so I approved your promotion. If you weren't, I'd have done the opposite. Her eyes dropped to the floor, her silence louder than any retort. I saw it. Then, the crack in her confidence, the dawning realization that she'd misjudged me for years. I could have pressed, let her squirm. But that wasn't me. Instead, I pulled a folded sheet from my pocket, a budget plan for a new initiative, tech education, for underprivileged kids. We're launching this soon, I said, holding it out. You'd be a great fit if you're interested. Her fingers hesitated, then stayed still, not taking the paper, but her eyes softened, a shift so subtle I might have missed it if I hadn't known her so long. I turned to leave, giving her space. She needed time, and I wasn't here to demand apologies. As I stepped into the hallway, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly, I felt a strange lightness. The truth was out, not as a weapon, but as a mirror reflecting who we both were. Vivian's silence followed me, not the mocking kind she'd wielded at brunch, but something heavier laced with questions she hadn't yet voiced. I wondered what she saw in that moment, not just the co-founder, but the sister she'd dismissed as a shadow. Back in my apartment, the city's lights pulsed through the mist, and I opened my laptop, the Dataloom system, a familiar hum. Another alert popped up. Budget proposal submitted. Vivian Bennett. She was still working, still pushing, even after the truth had hit. I smiled faintly, the drizzle tapping my window like quiet applause. The seed I'd planted in the pantry was taking root, and soon I'd see if it would grow into respect or resentment. Can a single moment rewrite years of being unseen? 3 weeks after Vivian's confrontation in the pantry, I stood in a guest dressing room by Lake Union, staring into a mirror framed by soft chandelier light. My black dress, minimalist but elegant, hugged a frame worn thin from late nights. Coding Dataloom systems. My hair was pinned neatly, lips brushed with faint pink, not to stand out but to step forward. Tonight was the 5th anniversary gala, and for the first time I'd agreed to appear as co-founder, not just a name in the shadows. The Seattle skyline glittered beyond the glass walls, a reminder of the empire I'd built in silence. My hands trembled as I adjusted my dress. I'd chosen anonymity to protect my freedom, but now at 29 I felt a pull to own my place. Not for fame, but for the truth I'd carried too long. The gala hummed with energy, the venue's glass walls reflecting ripples of light across the floor. I lingered in the wings, Sam beside me, his tie slightly askew. "Ready, Julia?" he asked, his grin steadying me. I swallowed hard. Not really, but no one's ever ready to step out of the dark. He laughed. "You're not stepping out, you're stepping up." The MC's voice cut through the crowd. "Please welcome the co-founders of Dataloom, Samuel Fletcher and Julia Bennett." Applause erupted sharp and electric as I walked onto the stage, the spotlight warm on my skin. Every eye turned to me, a sea of faces surprised to see the ghost made real. I spotted Vivian at the back clutching a champagne glass. She hadn't sipped, her face pale as if the ground beneath her had shifted. Our eyes met briefly, hers wide with something between awe and disorientation. Sam spoke first, weaving our story from a garage startup to a company reshaping industries. When he passed me the mic, the room stilled. "Hi, everyone," I began, my voice steady, despite my racing pulse. "I'm Julia Bennett, and for many of you, this is the first time you've seen me." A gentle laugh rippled through the crowd, warm, not mocking. I'm not great at speeches, but 5 years ago, Sam and I believed technology could be built on trust. I chose to work behind the scenes, but tonight, I'm here out of gratitude. Applause rose again, and I stepped back, my heart lighter. Vivian was gone by the time the lights shifted to dinner, her absence a quiet ache I hadn't expected. 2 days later, I sat in the 10th floor conference room, the city's mist curling outside. I opened a drawer, and pulled out a small walnut box I'd kept since college. Inside, I placed a navy linen notebook, a sleek black pen, and a handwritten card. The words took an hour to craft, simple but honest. Vivian, your work at Dataloom is strong. You're capable, and I believe in your potential. I'm proud to work with you, even if we started in silence, Julia. I handed it to the delivery assistant with a quiet instruction. No sender name. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness, just an open door, one she could walk through if she chose. I didn't expect a reply, but I watched her from afar, my laptop screen glowing with her latest reports, more focused, less flashy, as if the truth had stripped away her need to perform. A week later, Vivian's name appeared on a new proposal, a sponsorship initiative for female interns in tech, with workshops led by department heads. I read it slowly, my coffee cooling on the desk. The initiative's name, Touch the Screen. Touch the Future carried a note in italics inspired by the quiet mission of Julia Bennett. My breath caught. She'd seen me not just as a co-founder, but as someone whose silence held purpose. That afternoon, I slipped into the pantry for a tea, the air sharp with the scent of brewing coffee. Vivian was there, pouring hot water into a carafe. She turned, and for a moment we froze, the space between us softer than before. "The pen is beautiful," she said, her voice low. "And the notebook. I've written a few pages." I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips. "I'm glad you liked it." She hesitated, then added, "I don't think I ever understood you, Julia. Or maybe I never tried." I let her words settle, not rushing to fill the silence. "There's time," I said simply, and walked away, the warmth of her gaze lingering like a promise. Vivian's meetings changed after that. She leaned forward, took notes, and asked questions that cut to the core of projects. I stood outside a conference room one day unseen as she presented a revised budget for an AI initiative, her voice calm, not commanding. The shift wasn't loud, but it was real. I didn't need her to say more. Her actions spoke, and in them I saw the sister I'd always hoped she could be, one who didn't need to outshine to shine. A month after the party, I sat at my family's usual brunch spot by the Blue Lake, the familiar smell of warm cinnamon rolls mingling with the April breeze. The long balcony table was bustling with conversation, sunlight filtering through striped curtains, but my eyes kept on Vivian's empty chair. Since her initiative for female interns, she had become quieter at work, her suggestions sharper, her presence less focused on attention, and more focused on winning attention. I wondered if she had brought that change here, to the place where her words had once hurt me the most. In this moment, I no longer needed her approval, but I hoped for something simpler, a look that saw me as an equal, not a shadow. Vivian arrived 5 minutes late, her usual radiance replaced by a white blouse and dark jeans, her hair pulled back and no makeup. She slid into her seat, her eyes meeting mine for a brief, hesitant moment. I nodded, and she responded, a silent thread weaving between us. No words, just a look that held more apologies than years of apologies. My mother was in the middle of telling me about her tulip garden when Uncle Henry chuckled, his fork resting on a pancake. "So Julia's still tinkering with video games at home." His voice was soft, but it carried the old assumption that my work was a hobby, not a legacy. I opened my mouth to reply, a polite retort ready, but Vivian's voice cut in clear and unwavering. "Uncle," she said, setting down her coffee cup. "Julia is the smartest person I know. Without her, I wouldn't be here today." The table fell silent, forks paused in midair. Vivian didn't flinch, her gaze steady as she continued. "I thought I had it all figured out, but Julia taught me humility. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strength, choosing action over show. She built Dataloom, and I'm proud to work with her." Uncle Henry blinked, stunned, while Aunt Laura nodded slightly. My mother took my hand, the squeeze warm and wordless. I tilted my head, looking into Vivian's eyes, and in that moment I saw it, an unspoken gratitude, a respect not in name but in truth. I said nothing. The weight of her words was enough, a bridge across years of distance. As the meal ended, the conversation turned to the Mariners' summer and season plans. I stood to retrieve my bag, the wooden floorboards of the balcony creaking under my feet. Vivian stepped toward me, her coat draped over her arm. She leaned in close, her voice whispering just for me. You don't have to forgive me, Julia, but I will never be that person again. I turned, and for the first time in years, I gave her a genuine smile, soft but sure. I know, I said. And I never needed an apology. We walked outside together, the spring air cool on my skin, the tension that had defined us melting into a quiet understanding. The past wasn't erased, but it no longer lived inside me like a bruise. That afternoon, I returned to my apartment, Lake Union, sparkling under a clear sky. I made a cup of chamomile tea steaming and opened my laptop. A message from Sam popped up. Heard brunch, went well, progress. I typed back, a new beginning, I thought. Sitting down on the sofa, I stared out the window at the water, the steady pulse of the city outside Vivian, and I would never be fairy tale sisters, all laughter and shared secrets. But we were two women who had stumbled, learned and chosen to meet not through old grudges, but through honest understanding. That was enough. What do you think of our journey? Can a belated understanding mend a relationship that once seemed irreparably broken? I used to believe that recognition was the only measure of worth, but now I know that attention is not, but the courage to grow the grace to begin again. Share your thoughts and join me for more stories of family truth and quiet triumph. Have you ever